Hi everyone, I'm Birgit O'Connor and welcome to the world of watercolor painting. So today we've got a really special guest from Washington, Tamra Sheline, and we're going to talk about how she became an artist, a little bit about her history, and I'm going to show you some of her paintings because she's got some amazing work. And how I first met Tamra was in one of my workshops up there in Portland, Oregon for the Washington Watercolor Society. And I was so fascinated by what she has done with Yupo paper because I dabbled like maybe once with it, and it was a pretty slippery surface, and I just couldn't do the techniques that I am usually used to, so I didn't spend much time with it. But I was so amazed at what she has done that I thought that you would be really interested in this. So let's get started and let's meet Tamra. Hi, Tamra.
Hello, how are you?
I am great. So tell us, where in Washington are you?
I'm in Camas, Washington, the mountains behind Camas, Washington, right by Vancouver, and I love it here.
Wonderful. So now let's start with, why don't you tell me, first of all, how everybody can pronounce your name?
Sure, it's Tamra Sheline.
And do you have a website?
I do. It's tamrasheline.com.
And you've got your homepage, about you, the gallery, events coming up, art parties, Yupo classes, shop, and graphics. So this is a beautiful little hummingbird, just outstanding what you can do.
Thank you.
So people can also find you on your Instagram page, The Happy Artist. Beautiful. And they can get an idea of the work that you're doing and the parties that you do also. So first of all, how did you start becoming an artist? Is this something that you were always interested in? Did you go to school to be an artist? Or,
I went to school to be a graphic designer. I always loved art. I was always known for painting and drawing and illustrating. I took drafting in high school, and I was going to be an architect until I figured out how much math there was going to be. And so I switched over to the graphics, and I loved the painting, but I stayed with the graphics just because of bills and, quick and easy, quicker to make money that way.
Exactly. Well, so how did you switch over from, because you're not doing the graphics as much as you are doing your fine art now, right?
Well, yes and no. I just finished a book with USGS doing maps.
Right. I remember you talking about that.
Another side, but I don't advertise for it. It's just word of mouth.
Yeah, you've done some amazing work with that. That's interesting too.
And then when I was doing graphics, I was doing graphics, and then I was asked to do some illustrating for a book, and so it pulled me back into the to doing the illustrating again. And that was when we were living down in at Camp Pendleton, San Clemente. My husband was a Marine, and for 28 years, and so we were down there, and I started working for an ad agency on Hollywood Boulevard down there as an independent contractor illustrator, and worked with using the computer, but drawing exercises for like Paula, Abdul, and Misty May, and a bunch of yoga mats and such like that. So it kind of pulled me back into the more illustrating creative side, but I was still using the computer. And then it kind of just kept going. People would see, that's when I was introduced to Yupo, was when I was working at the ad agency, because it takes pen really well because it's super smooth. Mm-hmm. So I'd use micron pens, and then at some point I wanted to add color, and I had my art studio was my kitchen table at that point, and so I just started adding in some watercolor because I needed some color on top of the micron pen, and I liked the way it was working, and I had a gentleman tell me there's no way it can work that way, so therefore I had to spend more time and figure out how to make it work. So
well, I was fascinated by your paintings on Yupo. And actually, so what I'm thinking is, I wanted to find out more about you, but why don't we take a look at your painting so everybody gets an idea of what you do?
what you're showing right there is the Steelhead Reverence, which is, I won first place with this one up here last year. So this is Steelhead Reverence, and it's saturated with all kinds of color. This is about a 40-hour painting, because with Yupo you have to paint and then let it dry. When I teach my workshops, I teach that it's that you're making a puddle of water and you're adding the color, the paint to the puddle, and so you're working within puddles. So for instance, this right here is one puddle where the mouth is. Then I would take and make this one big thing of water right here and add in all this color. And then as it's drying, I can add more colors and saturate. So I almost work at it like it's a stained glass.
Here you are, you catch salmon. I just can't handle all day with the guys, you know. I mean, it's not, you know, dawn to dusk, and I just can't do all day.
I can't do that either. I have a second vehicle just to get off when I catch it and I'm on. Actually, I like crabbing better because it's only a 2-hour tour.
Exactly. The crab's okay. You know, you just get out there and then you can come back. But with the salmon fishing, it's like, yeah, it's a long.
I don't do it very often.
Yeah, no. Well, you did good. You did great. And actually, I'm sorry.
The extra pole. I read the book and they can deal with my pole.
Are you going out in the ocean, or are you?
That's in Astoria, out in Oregon. That's on the coast.
Okay, because
but that's in the bay. It was very rough. We were out in the ocean actually.
Yeah, it's like yeah, it gets really rough out there. You know, my husband caught a giant sea bass the other day, so he was really excited about that. And what happened was he's getting it up to the boat, and all of a sudden a white shark comes along and just swallows it.
It swallows it. We usually have the seals.
Yeah, no, the seals too.
The salmon. Whenever I paint, I like to use a couple pictures for reference, and then I like to use something that is an inspiration for me. So like the very bottom of that, there's a piece of artwork there that I really like the look of it, and I can't right offhand think of who paints those, but I just admire his work a lot, and so I like to have those vibrant. So therefore, and then I go through and I find other reference pictures to go from, because there never seems to be the perfect one. So
right.
So on that one there, I've used the color of the middle one, but the actual graphics, or actually the oh my goodness, what am I trying to say? The top one, I'm using that as more of the painting reference, and the other one's just for color.
Well, they're all so similar.
I've just done the mouth first.
So then here, what are you doing right here?
That's the mouth. That's the very, very beginning. Let me get that back down.
So that would be like this area right in here.
That area here, and let it dry, and then I'll come back in later. With Yupo, you can paint it one time. You can take a brush and you can go across it once, but if you go across a second time, of course, it'll lift it back up. So, which is a positive negative of Yupo. So here, once it was dry, I went in and I added another bubble of water, so it was a puddle, and then I added more colors on top. So it's like a wash in a way.
I think we've got a really good way to describe that in your owl painting. I was taking a look at that too. Yeah. So we'll take a look at that. But I also just wanted to go through this because I loved that reference photo. And also when you have your sea turtle, that is amazing. And I love all those effects.
That's a 70-hour one. I couldn't sell it either. I just couldn't sell it. It's not for sale just because it was the first one. There's many, many layers. I start off and I paint this one here. Again, I would use this area here. And then this. I usually, because I'm not a traditional watercolorist, I have no problem using gouache. I'll come back in with white gouache or white and add that in with some color so that it's opaque and I can add on top. This is just, like I said, 70 hours of it. These are all bubbles, you know, background. That's just, again, adding more and more color as it's drying. Although I kind of cheated on this one. I'm more about the effect at the end. I don't go for purity.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Well, I'm actually finding quite a
I
few
did
artists
use
are
an
like
acrylic
that.
ink. This is the Amsterdam acrylic ink.
Oh, okay.
Here.
So it's like a fluid acrylic.
It is a fluid acrylic. And so I believe, I painted this a few years ago. So I'm kind of, I believe this is, I didn't use exactly this one, but I had added drops in there just to make it more vibrant. I think I used a Prussian blue or a cobalt blue in this area, just so that it would be really on top and vibrant. A lot of times I do paint straight out of the tube when it comes to watercolor though.
Mm-hmm. So when you're doing this and you're using a fluid acrylic on top, don't you have to come in with an alcohol instead of a water to lift it?
Yes, I absolutely, before I paint anything on Yupo, I do use alcohol ink. Excuse me. Before I paint on Yupo, I use the rubbing alcohol. You have to wipe it completely down to remove all your fingerprints. I think I also should share is that I also use, instead of using a regular pencil to illustrate with before I start painting, I use a watercolor pencil. And so therefore there's no oils in it and it'll wipe away. There again, you can just wipe it with a clean paper towel, and I use the Viva towels so that there's no texture to it. I also use makeup sponges. Instead of the Mr. Clean scrubber, I use.
And you do that because there's no, well, tell me why.
Because when I go to clean things up, I can use the rubbing alcohol, and it takes and cleans off absolutely every piece. I won't. Oh my goodness.
That's okay.
I'm so sorry. I thought I even unplugged the phone. Hold on really quick, Bridget. On a side note, did you know, I don't know if you realize, my youngest is autistic, so we have to do all the other, everything else on the side. Oh, to make everything normal.
Yeah.
Anyway,
wow.
All right, so going back to this. So I use a watercolor pencil underneath so I don't have oil in the regular pencil. So you never have resistance. I'm able to just completely keep adding more and more paint. Right, like for instance, the eyeball, that is just one big bubble of water, and then I've added black going on into it.
It's amazing.
And I use indigo, I believe, at the very, very end. I'll add in some white or something just to give it the highlight. Sometimes I'll use a Q-tip, or I like to use the makeup applicators that are like Q-tips, because they have a really fine point and I can rub away, which is one of the great things about Yupo, is that when I'm painting Yupo, I paint it like it's an acrylic, because I don't have to worry about my whites. So when I'm painting, I'll paint the darks, I'll paint the lights. I don't really worry about the system as far as the paint. You know, I don't have to worry about going dark first or light first like you would in different mediums.
Right, it makes it a little easier to do that. Let me ask you now, with these little bubbles in the background, are you dropping in alcohol on top of the color, or?
That's even crazier, because we always laugh. When I'm painting, I'm always what if. I'm like this. This is the only closest I get to science. That is hydrogen peroxide.
Oh, isn't that interesting?
I just sprinkled some on there just to see, and I like literally. I always am like, what if? What if I do this? What if I add that? I have
fascinating.
For instance, I have Himalayan white salt, pink salt. I use all kinds of things. Red flakes.
Did you say pepper flakes?
Yes, red pepper flakes. I'll sprinkle those in.
What would the red pepper flakes do?
Shapes of them are round, and so when they dry, I'll put them in when I'm doing rocks, just for texturizing.
Have you tried that on watercolor or just on Yupo?
No, I haven't used it on watercolor. I haven't used a piece of watercolor paper since your class. I told you that was so rare for me.
Well, and to have somebody like you in my class, that works on this, I definitely remembered you. Let's take a look and see what else we have here. Now, you've got a lot of texture on this.
Yes. So that one, there again, those are a bunch of bubbles. You just think about every single rock, every single shape is a puddle of water. And then I go in and I add in different techniques. In my workshops, rocks are a great way to teach people to be comfortable with Yupo, because I teach them how to use different ways of doing textures.
It looks like so much fun. You said the different salts, like a Himalayan salt and something else.
So what I use is I'll use rock salt with this, or I'll use Epsom salt. I just use a different table salt. It doesn't matter. It's just different textures, different sizes, and they all have different. I think they have scientific reasons the way they interact with the different paints, whether it's a granulated paint, paint with that when it dries, it's all granulated. I try to work within. I do want to reference back to one of your classes. You are teaching how to not have blossoms.
Yeah.
And I teach how to work with blossoms.
Well, it really depends on the subject, because like when you were in my class, we were working on florals.
Correct.
And that particular thing, it's like in my online courses, I've actually been doing more live demonstrations, and that's been so much fun. And then it's like working with whatever's happening on the paper, and it's much quicker and freer. But, to do a demonstration of a floral, it's more involved, and we're trying to get the smooth layering on there. Yeah, it's really different, but having that freedom like this of playing with the salt and the pepper flakes and the blossoms is a lot of fun.
So you'll laugh, because see where there's the really, really fine lines in there? I use a dental instrument and scratch those out. So I create like a scratch board.
I think we've got a really good example of that coming up in just a few minutes. So let's take a look at that one in a second. But before we go there, I want everybody to be able to see your fish and how you handled that. I love this texture in here. That's beautiful.
Thank you.
That is so pretty. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look at, let's see, find the right thing. I'm going to look at your birds, because I think that would be a good example of what we were looking at. This was very sweet. I was created to create.
Well, and that's going back and forth. That's actually, the bird is on Yupo, and I didn't like the background, and it was kind of going haywire. And so I actually cut that out and put that on a canvas.
Oh.
That's a complete, and then I pulled it into Photoshop and added the text.
Well, it's wonderful. And I thought this was a wonderful saying, so that's why I wanted to show everybody this too. I was created to create. I love that. And then let's look at this one here. That was striking. And this is on Yupo?
Yeah, that's all Yupo. That is using, actually, I sat down, I had a new paint. I had the Rose Madder, and I do not know who I had it from. I think it was Daniel Smith. That I had gotten a brand new paint, and so I was inspired to paint something pink. And so that one I started off, first of all, his name is Pink Floyd, the lighter side. And I started off with his beak to begin with, and then I went to his eyeball. It's kind of interesting how that works. And then while those were drying, because when you're painting on Yupo, you never can paint areas that are touching each other. They have to be separated so that you have a gully, or a gully or a gap in between the paints as they're drying. And I also move my paints around. I'll pick up my paper and move it so that it becomes fluid. so that one, I painted that one really quickly. That was like a 4-hour painting. I just got going and was trying to create the technique, a different technique. I personally like to challenge myself. That was a picture that I had taken at the Portland Zoo, and I wanted to have a fluid, soft face or head, and then trying to figure out how to do the texture on the feathers. I turned around and used a fan brush, and it's a really old one. It's a really cheap brush. And I went through, and as I laid down the paint, I went back in and just texturized and pushed it around with that really sad looking brush, and created those feathers. And as they dried, I just left them.
Well, it looks like you also came in with an opaque or a gouache on top.
I did. Now towards the bottom, and there's some other areas I did. I use a Winsor Newton white gouache, zinc white, and I'm really, I like to take it and it kind of pulls everything to the front. It gives me a little bit of a control to throw in those highlights.
Mm-hmm. It's beautiful.
Thank
and then
you.
let's take a look here at, I think this is a great description of your process right here, because, a lot of people would probably stop right here. And because it's a little out of control, how do you handle it? And there's your puddles, and then we've got this granulation. And so this is what you're starting with, right?
Correct. And so that one, you can see there's just puddles of water there. And you just keep adding more and more layers. I call this the best way to get through football season, because my really, really highly detailed paintings, that's usually during football season when I can have complete quiet and sit there and do all my texturizing. And so as you can see, I'm using a dental instrument there. After I went through and did the puddle of water for the eye and let it completely dry, then I went back in and started scratching in, and I go back and forth.
You know what? I'm going to take a look at this here. So here you've got your, and then you must have lifted something out, right? And then dropped in more color there.
Yes. Yes, exactly. So it's one of those things where it's kind of a make it up as you go kind of thing. It's just like, how do I go about creating this look? And I'm looking at the photograph and it's trying to figure out the game plan as far as how you're going to accomplish something, because there's really no rules. I'm making up my rules as I go.
So for here, are you using a fan brush? You're using the instrument for the finest details here.
Correct. There's some fan brushes being used in there. I have an array of fan brushes. Sometimes I'll cut them, so they're erratic. The bristles are erratic.
Does your dental tool ruin the surface of the paper?
It can if you push too hard, but I honestly probably have a good 30 different kinds of dental instruments. Mm-hmm. I've also I do demos for Blick Art Supply, and so when I'm in there, I will look for different scratch tools too. I've come up with some different scratch tools.
And because I'm thinking, where do you get your dental tools?
From my dentist. I trade prints.
That's good to know. That's a great.
Also, there's wait a minute. The other day I was with my husband at the Sportsman's Show, because of course we always get to go to those, and I found this pack, and it's for cleaning things. It's for cleaning, I don't know. It's an industrial tool is what they call it. And so I went through, and so it's like a dental instrument, except for it's a double-in pick set.
What do they call that?
It's called a double-in pick set.
Oh, that's interesting.
I know. Who knew, right?
Yeah.
My husband, he takes me to, the home improvement stores, and I find all kinds of texturizing tools while I'm there. You can take me anywhere, and I have to find some art supply.
Well, I just love what you do. And let's look at the final product here, because that is amazing. Look at that. Look at, from this to that. And then
It's a matter of not giving up, and it's kind of like life. You just keep pushing through and not giving up. You know, you just have to figure out how to get around what you're dealt with. You know, how that's the part I think I like about the Yupo, because when I do illustrating on the computer, I'm so in control. You know, when I use a micron pen, I'm so in control. And then I turn around and use watercolor on Yupo, and it's really, you kind of have to just let go and be okay with what happens and how to work with it.
What we can see here is that you would have used that instrument to pull out those finer feathers.
Yeah, it's a lot of time there.
Mingling a color, and then you came back in. I guess you were scratching up here to get the whites. First, I thought maybe you did the gouache, but that looks really white. So it's
that one that I know of.
And then how did you handle your sky over here?
That is using a sea sponge.
Oh.
And just adding bunches of color and taking out. It's just going back and forth, adding the color and taking out. Just lots of layers of it.
It's beautiful.
Well, you have to remember too is that if you have Yupo, everything sits on top of the paper.
Yeah.
It doesn't absorb. So therefore, it's like you only lose like 20 to 30% of your color, because when the water evaporates, versus when you're painting on paper, traditional paper, then it absorbs into the, I don't know, you know how much of a percentage you lose on color, but you really don't lose as much on Yupo because it's sitting on top.
I think it's about 25% if you have a damp surface, and about 10% if you have a dry surface. But let's take a look at then your little bird here. That was very cute. And is that on Yupo also?
That's all on Yupo, yes. That's just a really quick sketch actually that turned out good. You know, there's some of those that I'll have a commission and I'm working quickly to work on the commission, and I have to work through something first. And that was just where I had never done a chickadee before. And so I thought, well, you know what, let's just play and see what comes up. And sometimes those are the ones where you're brave and you add colors that you normally wouldn't add. And sometimes those just turn out really great.
Well, it just looks like so much fun. And let's take a look at this here. Now, this has a different kind of background up here. You did a lot of scratching in there. And look at that texture right through here. Really cool.
So that one, actually, when I first painted it, it was really, I'd used like a lime green. It was really obnoxious background. So then I went back in and I made a puddle of water, and I just, but yeah, that was using a strainer. I think it's a plastic strainer. I don't know. I have a whole big box of just texturizing tools. That's just something I just laid down. It's a screen or some sort.
And did you have to wait for it to dry, put the screen down and let it dry completely? And
correct. I'll just leave it there overnight, let it dry. Honestly, when I'm painting, I usually paint 2 or 3 paintings at a time. I have these large tables, and I usually have a few things set up. So I don't paint and just sit there waiting for the paint to dry.
And for this area over here, you couldn't lift it out, so you must have come back in and then worked with your darker colors, so you got the spaces in between, so a little negative painting through there.
Correct. So I added in, I put basically it's like a wash, but, and using a blow dryer to really quickly dry it, and being very careful not to go into the area that I'd already painted on the hen. And making sure, you know, those boundaries don't go over. What Yupo's really great about, if you add water, the water pretty much sits where you left it. It doesn't soak in, so you have this bubble that just sits there, and you can get a really clean line with it, unless you're tilting your paper. Then it'll start to run, but otherwise it'll stay where you want it.
Well, let's look at, you have a couple other things that were really neat. It's like you've got the bears and you've got the wine, and I'll go to the bears first. I think that would be fun. So let's take a look at that here.
That one was a long process. You know how sometimes there's some paintings that you, about halfway through, it's kind of like cleaning a closet. It's all messy and you're like, what was I thinking? That's what painting was. About halfway through, you're like, what was I thinking? That one I won. I think I won first place on that one also. It was a big long process. I used Moon Glow by Daniel Smith. It's like one of my very favorite paints to use. It's pretty new to me, and I love using it to create the different textures and different colors. That was a lot of adding and subtracting of the paint. I rub out and I add it in. The great thing is with the blue, if you know how to use your blues, it does stain, like your indigos and your Prussians and all that. Those all will stain the Yupo if you leave them too long. And I was actually using that to my advantage by rubbing them out.
And you're using a little Bounty right here, or Viva?
That's Viva, yeah. And that sometimes it'll be damp and sometimes it's just dry, and it just depends on how I'm trying to do it. How much I want to pull out. Sometimes it's just a dry Viva and pulling that out.
And then here's your bear, another bear, and we can see that big puddle that you've got over here. You've already worked on his face. And so we can see what's happening there. And then let's take a look at how you handled him. Beautifully, beautifully done.
Thank you. It's, it's learning to work with your different paints, because like your granulated paints, some of them, I'm trying to think which blue that was that I added in there, and it kind of like it was as a resistance. It kind of has a resistance to it with the other paint.
Was it a French ultramarine blue?
What was it?
French ultramarine blue?
No. I want to say it was like a Maya.
Oh, I don't know that one. So, and I also love how you handled his face in here. So let's take a look at, let's see, let's take a look at this. This was pretty fascinating how you handled this. So tell me the story about your glass of wine here.
Well, that was something that I wanted to paint for a long time. I have a series of wine, and I knew what I wanted to paint, but I couldn't figure it out. And I woke up in the middle of the night one time, and I guess I was painting in my dreams, and I woke up and I started painting, and I came up with the puddles again. And there, I do have to let you know, when I have a picture, I take it into Photoshop, and sometimes I will outline it in Photoshop so that it'll break everything down.
So look at all that mingling of color that you've got here. Just amazing.
And it's just a matter of, tilting your paper and watching it blend. Sometimes I feel like I'm tie-dyeing in a sense, because I'm blending colors and playing with them and then taking out. That's the freedom of Yupos, because you can pull out when you're not liking what's going on. You just wipe it clean and start over sometimes,
And then you came in with a little detail through here. So you've got all that. Let's take a look. And then you've got a little puddle here. And what kind of brush are you using here?
That one is one of those really inexpensive ones, a Simply Simon's. It's a really inexpensive angled comb, and you have your really nice expensive brushes, and I use Da Vinci and Princeton, my two very, very favorites. But then, I have no problem using the least expensive ones also, because you can get a lot of texture with them.
And you can get detail with the synthetics. So it looks like, for what you've got here, you're already working with a big amount of water, and then you can, for what you need to do the lifting, the synthetics would work very nicely. So this is amazing. Like when we're looking at this and the color shift there, did you layer it on, or is that just a different?
That's layering. Yeah, I'm going in there with more puddles on top of puddles. And drying completely in between.
And I could see a lot of people just stopping right here, not knowing where to go with it. And then to look at what you've done is amazing.
That's just determination.
But
I think the graphic background helps a lot, because I know what I have in my mind and how I want to draw it, or how I want the end effect to come about. And so that's where I think that helps me.
And then this too, this is gorgeous.
That was that came from a workshop that I was teaching here in Vancouver, and teaching how to use the fluid motion of breaking down the different elements of that stream of wine. And how to, when you break it down, it really, there isn't that many puddles. It's just a matter of being patient and learning how to work with what you have with the water and the paints, like you do too. It's like you have to get to know your materials and how they work together.
For the glass, since you have so much fluidity here, how did you handle that edge of the glass?
So that is, I take with a dry brush and paint. I will make the line, and then I'll turn around and get the brush wet and only put water on the bottom side of that line of. I'm guessing you're talking about the upper left corner. Yes, that's where I've done a wet line. And then let it, because it's going to stay there because it's on plastic paper. And then I'm going to turn around and I add water to the one side, not the other. And so, and then sometimes I'll just use whatever, the makeup sponge or whatever or a brush, and start brushing it out until I no longer have anything there.
Well,
it's just a matter of.
Did you do your glass first, or did you paint the wine first?
Oh, the glass was the very, very last thing. And then at the upper right corner, that's where I went in and used the dental tool to scratch out. But then I also, you can also turn around, just like regular watercolor on watercolor paper. You can go in and add a bubble of water and then lay down the Viva towel and pull out that line.
It's beautiful. So we've taken a look at your wine here, and let's see what else we have here. I mean, it's just been a fascinating journey with just to be able to talk to you, because like I know nothing about Yupo. And let's take a look at a few of your flowers here. And that's fun too. I mean, a lot of people would feel very successful with something like this, and very fun. And you've got your
that was a workshop also.
And then here is our workshop. I look totally out. It's at
that was after a week of painting with all of us.
I'm embarrassed to even look at that. I look so bright. So we'll move on from there. And so let's take a look. So you do some outdoor festivals also.
I do. This summer I had to take a break from them, but normally I do about 3 or 4 of them.
That's a lot.
I love interacting with the people and hearing their input and baffling the science-minded people on how this actually works.
Oh, I bet you do.
I have many people come along and go, "There's just no way. It can't happen."
So tell me, because we have a lot of people that are interested in doing festivals too, do you recommend a particular booth system? Is there something that you like?
I actually, the one I use right now, I purchased that from a gentleman that had it custom built, and he had retired, and so I was able to get that from him, and he had it custom welded and everything. It's wonderful. I can, rearrange it however I want to.
Are you talking about the tent or the screen, or the screens?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm talking about the screen, the walls there, the screen walls. He had that custom made, and I really enjoy it.
Nice. It's always a challenge. I used to do festivals a long time ago, and that was before they even had these type of systems. And I had pegboards. It was just terrifying having to do these things because it was always so heavy and a pain, So, and now we could actually have systems that are a little bit easier, and that would make it more enjoyable. So let's see. Let's take another look at your. That's very beautiful with your lighting in the background.
That was on the computer, yeah. Thank you.
And let's see, something that we usually want to get if you are doing a festival is a corner booth. That works nicely, but you've got have the
yes.
you know, 2 walls open, which is great. And you also have a painting over here that you were working on, which was an acrylic. Let's see, I guess I don't have it in.
Correct. I was doing that was a live painting that I was doing for an auction. They were going to be auctioning that off.
It is fun. You know, I do miss it. You just can't do everything. Oh, and
It's so hard, right?
it is. You got a lot of things.
It's hard to do a live painting for Yupo. So,
and then here's a flower that you've done. So that now, is this would be a finished piece here, or is this in progress?
I think that one was in progress. That was a while ago. I think that was me just playing around with just different avenues. I think that's the very first one where I tried scratching out the edges.
Okay.
And I like to show people where I started and how I've progressed through.
Well, it's just because the reds are challenging and tough, and
oh boy, aren't they?
Yeah. And then let's take a look at this one here. This would be a fun one too. And I think if somebody wanted to start with Yupo, I think that this would be something that they could tackle fairly easily. You know, you've got your background in, and then they create their flowers. They can lift, they can move it.
That one is on the translucent Yupo, and I recommend that to be the one they start with. To translucent paper for the Yupo has a little bit of a tooth to it, so it holds on to the paint a little bit easier, as well as it's translucent. So if you do not like to draw, you can actually trace it. You can trace.
I just pulled up like the Yupo watercolor paper. This is from Dick Blick, just to take a look at that.
That's the typical. That's the regular one. That is opaque.
You know what? Right there, I wouldn't have even known a difference. So we've got that, and let's look at this one here.
That would be the opaque. You also can get like a super heavy. I got a great deal on them. I'm sorry. These then there's the heavy version, which is 144 pound, which is super heavy.
Well, it's just like, I'm gonna write that down. You know, I wouldn't have even. I thought, oh, Yupo is Yupo, just like anybody that's coming into regular watercolor is going to think watercolor paper is watercolor paper and all that. So it's interesting that you would say a translucent one other than the opaque. And so what happens with the opaque?
The opaque is the typical one that you normally find. That's the opaque one.
And are the results different on that?
That's actually very silky. There's no tooth to it at all. So it's like painting on glass or anything like that. You know, I think it would be great to share with you. Yupo is actually manufactured back in New Jersey, and they've been doing it since the 1970s. And it started off as the label, the waterproof labels. So like for offset printing. So like your shampoo bottles and things like that, those labels that need to be waterproof, that's Yupo, a very thin version. But they started doing those back in the 70s. And it's made out of recycled plastic milk cartons.
Oh, because like I thought it was a polypropylene.
Propylene, correct. There's different versions of it. There's different varieties, but for the most part, but at the same time, they're not being used with trees. So it's kind of nice, the recycling process of it.
So interesting.
The other thing is you can't rip it. If it's true, you cannot rip it.
Well, it's just so interesting to hear all about this. And so I don't miss anything here. So here we've got your crabs. You worked on that background first and then started adding the legs, and you left this white. That's a great example of seeing how you did that. And then you came back in
and always wipe it back through and wipe it clean. That there's using a lot of salt, starting to use a lot of salt, and the different percentages of salt to water, and then the different amounts of paint. It's just a matter of playing around with it.
Well, you just said something that was interesting too. So if somebody didn't like what they were doing, they could always just wipe it right off, right?
Correct. That's the great part is that I have an example I'll show you. So I started off let's see. I started off with this octopus, and I really loved it. And then I thought I would add in some blue. Well, it doesn't work well with my eye. I just don't like it. So I just thought I'd show you. I've started wiping it clean, the background. I'm taking the blue back out, so it's just the image of the octopus and the anchor. And you can do that.
Let me ask you, when you said the blue didn't work for you, did you get an emotional reaction from the blue? Did it kind of bum you out?
This right here is the moon glow paint. That's the only color I used on the tentacles. So there's so much blue in there, and purple, and it just didn't have a nice of a contrast. It kind of washed it out. And so I really liked the tentacles the way they were before the color came in the background. So I decided I'm just going to start wiping out.
I like that. I like that. I think that's great. And then let's take a quick look here. You have some bees, and this is not on Yupo, is it?
Yeah, it is. That was a workshop a couple weeks ago, 2 weeks ago. I taught just a short mini workshop on bees.
Fun. And then here I looked at this, and you've got I believe this is coming up, right? November 12th.
Yeah. Now that's my that's acrylic. Those are my art parties I do locally. They're acrylic.
So tell me why. Oh, and let's take a look at this one here. There you are.
Oh, there I am.
And you're also doing something with Fine Art America, I guess. How does that work for you?
Too.
Does that work for you? That's okay.
No. I think it's great to put yourself out there, and it's great to be visual, but I actually have a website that's being redesigned so that I can just sell straight from there. Right. And I use Finer Works to do my giclées and my prints out of Austin, Texas, and I really enjoy them. And they've bumped up their system so that I can link into them, and I therefore there's not such a percentage being lost.
And what's the name of it? Finer Works or something?
Finerworks.com. It's in Austin, Texas, and they are phenomenal. It's a smaller company. Mm-hmm. Prices are wonderful. The customer service is amazing. You had that one picture up where I was. I had all those giclées I just received, and they printed all those out, and they had them out to me within a week. And it's like, that's just incredible, that amount. And the quality is incredible. I've been using them for, probably about 5 or 6 years. And I've never had a problem. The only time I've ever had to call is when it's my fault for not ordering it quick enough. And they still have come through. As soon as I've called, they send it straight out, and they've just been amazing quality.
You're already working with this company, but there was a store that I did a workshop in, Spokane Art Supply.
Oh, yes, I love Spokane. I love Spokane, but I have not been to that place.
You already have your system in place, and they can be challenging when we want to think about that. But anyway, they have some art services, print and scan services here in the Spokane Art Supply. And the reason why I bring this up is because I was so impressed with what they did.
And I'm over in that area quite a bit, so that's really great to know, because I would love to use somebody locally. It's not local, but same state,
I thought they were really reasonable, and I thought about it even coming up there just to have them do my scans. And I don't do it very often, so you would contact Kurt. Anyway, you could take a look at that. And but I considered that, and I found somebody locally. I don't do it very often. Do you sell a lot of giclées?
I do, actually. I sell quite a bit. This year, just because I didn't do the festivals, the fairs like I normally do, right. But I usually sell almost, I don't know, a good percentage of my giclées. And I usually sell a lot of prints to go with it, or I'll have somebody buy an original and then turn around and order giclées to give out to their friends. I've had that happen a few times.
So now when you're doing the giclées, have you thought about doing something on Etsy or anything like that? I don't know.
I tried, Honestly, that's the reason I'm working my my website. The redesign of my website will be able to, so you can order from my website straight. And I think that that'll help a lot. It was more, I mean, I have a background in marketing, but I kind of prefer to paint over marketing now.
No,
So
totally understand that, because
version, you know?
we had some conversations in other podcasts about this, and with what you have right now, and that picture of you, which I will not say the name again, and that other people have had problems. You know, it is good for exposure. It's not there was a problem with the company, just the commission you get is not much. So doing it yourself is a much better idea. I'd say, from what I understand, a lot of people have been happy, but then if we're going to offer something, you need to have a low price point, it seems like.
You have to have a low price point, but you also, I believe, it's hard to stand out when it's such a saturated market there.
Exactly.
So and you have to really know your pinpoints.
Right. And, like even doing this podcast, like I thought, I don't need another thing on my plate.
Right.
But it has been so much fun to be able to talk to people and also get you more exposure. And I find it fascinating because here I actually make myself sit down for an hour, talk to you, and then we get to, I thought, wow, that is truly fascinating about your approach. And we're not distracted in a workshop or in any other situation, you know? I actually thought, wouldn't that be fun to have like my members, or maybe interview you during the members? But then I thought this is more intimate for right now. We could always do something like that in the future if you want.
Absolutely, so, that'd be great. I just wanted to let you know I have a workshop, a watercolor and Yupo workshop coming up November 9th here in Camas, Washington. That's local for me. And then next, I have another one coming up in January.
Do you have that on your website?
You know what? I will by the end of this week.
Okay, so
by the end of the day, it should be for the workshop coming up. It's just a real quick one. And then I have another one in January here in Vancouver at the Artist Loft, and I'll make sure to put all this information on my website. And then next May, I'll be up in Sydney, BC. Let's see, I have the information here. It's with the Snatch Peninsula Arts and Crafts Society, and I'll be up there May 30th and 31st for a 2-day workshop. And that'll be great. Just, I think what it is that I have a niche. I have people that have all these watercolor supplies, and they have done watercolors for so long that sometimes they just want to try something different, or they have the Yupo, and I come in as a guide basically, and introduce people to Yupo, and then how to control the chaos of the water on the plastic paper, and try to show how to be in control as much as you can be.
Now, do you use the alcohol inks on this? So basically, you're using watercolors and fluid acrylics on the Yupo. Do you use the alcohol inks on there?
I have. There is one painting I used. Honestly, I went and bought the alcohol inks, and I really didn't care for them because I don't know how to use them, honestly. But because as a true artist, it was like I spent the money on the alcohol inks, so I had to learn how to use them.
I have.
So I actually
I did a demo at Cheap Joe's, and people were talking about the alcohol inks, and I thought, ooh, of course you're in an art supply store, so what do? Instead of making money, you're spending it on
absolutely. I buy my frames. I know it sounds crazy. I do it backwards. I buy my frames and then I paint to my frame.
No, that doesn't sound crazy. It actually sounds like what quite a few people would do, especially keeping the budget down. I think that can work,
Because so for instance, I have Michael's, their oops pile, and it's super, super awesome. Like, wood. It's a beautiful frame. And so then I went through and I'm getting ready to paint it's a black bear, and that's going to be going in that one. Or else I have another frame that's really long and narrow, and it's just a gorgeous frame, and the wood. And I'm getting ready to paint a whale, like a really long sperm whale, and all the different colors and textures within that whale. And so yeah, some people paint one way, and I have a really great friend here in town that does custom framing and matting. So she's always a great to do all my matting here.
I think that's fascinating. You know, so what you're doing then is I like that. It's an affordable way of doing it. But you are still keeping consistency in your frames. You know, they're not like all different wild stuff. There's still
no. I like the natural textures and such. What it is that I'll find a frame, and sometimes I'll find that frame and go, gosh, what will look great in there, you know? And so then you have to go back and find something, which is a challenge. And I like to challenge myself in different aspects. And
so you have glass on them, right? So you don't.
I do glass.
Wow. Well, I should probably let you go here.
Yeah.
But I want to.
Fabulous. That's such an honor.
Oh, well, thank you. You know, it has been so much fun to talk to you today.
I'm just amazed how much you can do. You're amazing. You're my hero.
I love everything that I do, you know, and it's, and I get so inspired, and I'm a very action-oriented person. So if I think about it, I want to do it.
Right.
And the Yupo was very inspiring. Because like when I look at the paintings behind me, you know, they have a very different surface to them, more controlled. And even when I do I think the closest thing that I've gotten anywhere, it's definitely not the same, but like with my people that I started some.
I love your people.
But with this, you know, just the surface and really working
on her. Look at her skin tones.
I loved it. I had so much fun. And working with the blossoms and the drools, and I had so much fun with this. Wow. Well, I should probably let you go here.
Yeah.
But I want to.
Fabulous. That's such an honor.
Oh, well, thank you. You know, it has been so much fun to talk to you today. So tell everybody your website again.
It is tamrasheline.com, which is TAMRASHELINE.
Okay, and you've got some upcoming workshops starting in November, and they can find more information on your website. And I love that we were able to talk about Yupo. I find it absolutely fascinating, and I look forward to giving it a try. At least I think I will. So thank you again so much for joining us. Until next time, everyone, happy painting.